Hello everyone and welcome along to the TII podcast. My name is Craig Dennett and I'm your host for what is the first of our live bulletins during the World Cup break. The World Cup's not even started yet, but there's still been full of drama for Rangers at the start of this first week of the break. As I said, my name's Craig Dennett and I'm your host for this evening. I'm joined by Kai Watson. How you doing, Kai?
Good, mate. How's yourself?
Yeah, good, thank you. We're also joined by Reiss Cochrane. How you doing, Reiss?
Yeah, all good, lads, all good. Apart from Rangers.
Apart from Rangers, we thought I think there's been quite a few people celebrating the fact we don't have Rangers for 5 weeks, but we are very much on the case with the club and still talking about the big issues that are arising. Obviously, the main one is Giovanni van Bronckhorst. It looks as though, despite dropping points once again at the weekend against St Mirren and Paisley, it looks as though the board are sticking with Giovanni van Bronckhorst as it stands as the Rangers manager. I think we would all have expected Giovanni van Bronckhorst to no longer be the Rangers manager by this stage, especially 3 days after that result. And if we were going to make a change to the manager, there would be no better time than now to do so, with 5 weeks with pretty much a full squad to work on tactics, shape, all that sort of stuff for a new manager coming in. Kai, like I said, it does look as though the Rangers board are sticking with him for now. We saw the interview with the Dutch journalist on Sky Sports, I think it was, yesterday. What are your thoughts on the situation at the moment?
I think it got to a stage after Monday being gone that I don't think any of us are kind of surprised now. I think if anything was going to be done, it should have been done quick. Like, we've got the break now. It's perfect time to get a new manager in, time to give pretty much a mini pre-season at this point, to let the managers come in and see kind of how they assess the players we currently have and what they kind of need going forward. But I think the fact that it wasn't done either like by kind of end of play on Monday, I think we all kind of realised it wasn't going to happen, and just a feeling of kind of disappointment at this point. Like, we've obviously discussed the injury list, and that's, I think, what the board are kind of playing on and hoping that by the time these players come back, things could be better. And as much as Rangers could play better, the gap's already huge, and unfortunately our rivals don't look like they're going to drop many points this season. So I feel like it's over already.
Yeah, I think quite a lot of Rangers fans are very similar in their way of thinking as you, Kai. Reiss, are you surprised Gio's still in his job at this stage?
I don't even know if I'm surprised. I'm disappointed, but I don't know if I'm surprised. It's one of them that you can make the argument either side, but at the minute it's just not been good enough, and it did seem the perfect time for the change to happen. So to this point, I'm quite surprised it's not happened, but more disappointed than surprised.
Yeah, I think that's fair. There's quite a lot of comments coming in already, which show just how disappointed and how angry and how emotive a subject this is for Rangers fans at the moment, and we'll get to some of them shortly. I guess if we do work on the basis that Giovanni van Bronckhorst is still going to be the Rangers manager come the 15th of December when we take to the pitch at Ibrox against Hibs, Kai, what is the way forward for this Rangers team? How do we get out of this rut? How do we get out of the run of poor performances that we've had in recent weeks?
I think ideally there needs to be some kind of change in the style of play. Like, I know Van Bronckhorst has obviously been a bit kind of stubborn with the way we've been playing the league recently, and it just feels like he needs to change something. It was weird, like in the Europa League run, it seemed like his style was so adaptable, and they're dropping into the three at the back, and he made really kind of like intelligent changes on the park, and the players were playing really well. And just all of a sudden, it seems like he's got no ideas. There's no kind of drive or passion to change anything. It's just, we'll stick with what we have. We'll change players in the position, but no actually change the formation or kind of change the way it's going. Like, the amount of crosses we've put in recently is like staggering numbers. I can't remember off the top of my head, but an absolutely ridiculous amount of crosses going into the box with no end product from it. So it just seems like he needs to change something in the way he plays. And as much as players coming back could possibly lead him to change that, and just with the players he has might change how he's playing because he can use players in different ways. It's kind of what you need to hope for, but I don't see it happening at this point.
Yeah, I think it was 73 crosses against Livingston. I think it was the total, and obviously we scored in the 91st minute, I think, of that game. Reiss, I just want to come on to a comment that Thomas Neal made. He said that he isn't a bad manager, to be honest, but I think he's lost the dressing room. Kai spoke a wee bit there about how the players were playing well for a period, and then it just seems to have fallen off a cliff. Do you think it looks like he has lost the dressing room, or at least the confidence of the players and what he's trying to do?
100%. I really do. I think last season's success was with what I regard as, quite frankly, a totally different team. I think we're miles behind where we were last season, and I think that the more and more you see it, you start to see guys not even bothering to moan anymore. Like, and I'm not talking fans in the stand, I'm talking like Alan McGregor, who would usually be going off his nut at people not being direct, no pushing, no pressing hard enough. Like, and you just start to see that almost defeatedness about them, and the lack of effort, I think, at times has been quite staggering, and I would totally agree. I think he's lost confidence in the stands and on the park.
Yeah, Kai, you'll see the comment on the screen from Paul McGarrigle. We as fans can see that players are nowhere near as fit as they were last season. Why give them a 2-week holiday? Should be training hard. You might have seen pictures of Alfredo Morelos on a sun lounger with a cocktail today, looking like he's absolutely loving life back in Colombia. It's definitely not the image as fans that you want to see. I understand why the players are getting a break, because it has been quite an intensive kind of period, but surely the advice would have been keep it on the down low in terms of social media and that side of things. But do you think that, I think Giovanni van Bronckhorst said there'll be a 2-week break and then 3 weeks of a pre-season intensive training leading up to the Hibs game? Do you think that's enough time?
I'm sure I've seen on Twitter today that Aberdeen were already away at a training camp. I can't quite remember where it was they were away to, but they are away instantly. And it's a 5-week break. Can you trust, especially looking at Morelos, can you trust him to go away for 2 weeks and come back A, on time, B, in any kind of shape? Like, he's already not looked the fittest, and now he's got 2 weeks to go away and pretty much do what he wants. And if on day one he's on the sun lounger with cocktails, can you really trust him that he's not going to do that for 2 weeks? And then he's going to come back and it's pretty much the summer all over again. Especially when he's not even hit a level of fitness that fans are happy with, or even a level of effort. It's tough to kind of get behind the 2-week break, especially if, fair enough, Aberdeen haven't obviously had the European football and stuff to contend with, but the fact that they're willing to kind of go the whole 5 weeks and just kind of push on, they've obviously been performing a bit better recently, and they are obviously willing to push that, whereas I know Van Bronckhorst was away back to Holland. I think he's maybe a bit different since I'm sure he's living in Glasgow alone, so that's obviously to go and see his family, but surely you could still, I think 2 weeks, I don't know if people may think I'm being harsh saying 2 weeks is too long for a break to give them, but if you're looking at other sides that are using the whole 5 weeks to prepare, I don't see how you can justify giving the players a 2-week holiday when, in my eyes, have genuinely not earned it so far.
Yeah, I think, having thought about it a bit more, I reckon maybe a 1-week break and then 4 weeks working on stuff. Obviously, we've got the friendly with Leverkusen on the 10th of December, but I think it's quite obvious that the team needs to gel more than it has been, and needs to almost work through the issues that it's facing. I think there's been a few comments looking at the sort of style of play that we have at the moment. Reiss, Thomas Nielsen need to play a flat 4-4-2 with 2 up front. Some people in the comments, RFC 56, they are saying we don't have 2 strikers good enough, which is potentially true. Pacer saying that the horseshoe is boring and predictable. That's what Feyenoord fans said. What do we need to change, or what can we change when it comes to that Hibs game to make us more unpredictable, to create a more entertaining brand of football and ultimately a winning brand of football?
I think just to address a couple of comments there, I think football's moved on from 4-4-2, flat 4-4-2. I don't think that works. I think that's quite a dated approach to it. I think at the start of the season we were all calling for Colak and Morelos to play together, so it's probably recency bias to say that we've not got two good enough strikers to do that, when at the start of the season we all wanted it to happen. I think it's an individual approach really with the break for me. Like, I've seen a Kilmarnock player that went to the same school as me, he's in Dubai. Like, we're not all being ran into the ground. 2 weeks off, who cares? If things were going well, we really wouldn't bother. The only thing that worries me is it perhaps drawn a bit of a similarity to Celtic going to Dubai in the season we won 55? Is it maybe you're already playing poorly, with the possibility of making it even worse? If you lose a player through, I don't know, COVID or anything like that, then it could just get worse for here on in. But what we need moving forward, I think it is just a fresh start with the management. I think he might be an alright coach, but he's certainly not a manager.
Yeah, I think there's a few people saying that the Feyenoord fans warned us that this is coming, that they experienced something similar. Kai Ross, one of the fellow hosts of the TIA podcast, said he's never been able to implement a style in domestic games to create chances. It's a real slog at times watching this team try to break down opposition defences. I have to agree with that. Ross is also, I don't think, ever been a post-match reaction host of a winning Rangers game, which is a record I hope he stops very quickly. But in terms of his comment there on the style and domestic games create chances, we do seem to really struggle to create chances. And even in the St Mirren game at the weekend, we were, I think, one shot on target by the 60th minute, and that's not the style of football or the amount of chances that you expect to create against teams like St Mirren.
I think you can look at stats for games, and then there's a volume of shots that are being taken. But again, there's no real good chances. It's even if you look at the St Johnstone game, like the Tavernier goal, it's obviously the keeper's used blocked for that, but it's a shot that's straight at the keeper. It's a shot that if the sun's not in his eyes, there's not a player in front of him if he saves it. Like, the chances are really poor, and obviously when Colak went on his ridiculous streak of I'm sure it was 10-9, you're looking at it and he's scoring every chance, and now he's been looked at as he's missing chances, but he is only getting one. Obviously, when he's scoring all those goals, people are like, oh, you just need to give him one chance and he scores it. But I mean, you can't expect someone that's obviously like playing in the SPFL in the nicest way possible to kind of have that finishing ability. Like, a player, if they scored every chance they got, would not be playing in Scotland. And that's why, like, it's one chance a game at most at this point. There's no creativity, and you always talk about playing against the low block, and something obviously kind of Gerrard struggled with. But I feel like it's get even worse under Van Bronckhorst. Like, saying earlier about how the players were kind of playing under him in European games last year, and they would change it up. There's no freshness and no ideas. If it's not working, it's just, well, if we persevere long enough and we keep trying, we'll maybe get that lucky break. Someone will make a mistake. Someone will score a wonder goal. It's hopeful. If anything else, there's no style. There's nothing implemented. It's just technically on paper we've got better players in them. So if we keep hammering away, then we'll maybe get something. And it worked for a while, but obviously the wheels have completely fallen off the last 3 games, and it's something I think as fans we've seen coming for a while, but now it's just hit us really, really hard.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd have to agree with that. Reiss, it seems that the noises coming out of the club, which are very few and far between, but some of the comments that are making their way to journalists seem to be that he's had a lot of injuries to deal with, and that the board are giving him a bit of leeway because of that. Would you agree that he should get some leeway because of that, or do you think that's just making excuses?
No, I did at first. At first, 100%. I would agree with that, because I do still think we're plagued with injuries. A lot of them probably like unforeseeable, just unpredictable, and really long term. I don't think we get ones that are only like a couple of days a week. They all seem to be months, long weeks at a time. And I think Paul McGarrigle had a good question in the chat there about if we'd a fully fit squad, what would just 11 be? And if that were to be the case, I reckon we'd have a good team. But I think the way it's going now, it is as you're hitting hope, and we should be able to compete with them even with the squad we've got. And it is just very reminiscent of Celtic's 1920 season.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point you make about Paul McGarrigle's question there. So let's actually have a look at it, and we can kind of have a discussion about who, if all players were fit in our squad, who would be in each of the key positions or the starting 11 as such. So goalkeeper, you get 3 up there: Alan McGregor, John McLaughlin, Ross McCrory, Kai. I think I'd have to go with Alan McGregor as the number 1 at this point. I was all for John McLaughlin during the summer, but that definitely didn't work out how I expected, and I think many fans expected it to.
No, I'm the exact same boat. Craig. I was all for John McLaughlin started the season, and then the Old Firm game came along, and that ship sailed after that game for me, and I'd have to go with McGregor.
Reiss, would you full house on Alan McGregor?
Yeah, definitely, but I don't think Ross McCrory's a Rangers keeper.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that he signed a new contract earlier this season. I thought that was a bit of a strange one. I don't think he's going to get the game time, and I think when it comes to the summer, when Alan McGregor will hopefully have bid farewell for the final time to Rangers, I think the time for new and fresh goalkeepers to come in is then. So all in agreement about Alan McGregor. Central defensive partnerships now. Every single one of these players is currently injured just now, so I guess that kind of shows the size of the job or the task facing Giovanni van Bronckhorst. But let's just pretend that they're not injured. So we've got Philip Hollander, Connor Goldson, John Souttar, Ben Davies, and Leon King. Centre back partnership too for your starting 11. Reiss, I'll come to you first on this one.
Goldson and Souttar. If not, Goldson, Davies. But I think if the 3 of them are fit, you've got a good rotation there. Goldson's got to bring it every time for me. Head and shoulders above the rest of them.
Do you think I suppose I've always been an advocate of Connor Goldson, and I was kind of delighted that he signed a new contract. But do you think a lot of Rangers fans who were maybe a bit torn or in the middle about him signing a new contract have realised his value to the team now, Reiss?
100%. I think the only reason Goldson gets as much stick as he does is because we expect so much from him, and we expect so much from him because he's a good player.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with that. I think, to be fair, I'm interested in why you picked John Souttar over Ben Davies. I'll come back to that in a second. Kai, I think I would go for Goldson and Davies as my preferred partnership. What are your thoughts?
I'd go Goldson and Davies as well. It's actually at a point I've forgotten how good Hollander was and how good he could be. Like, it's been that long since I've seen him play. It'd obviously be tough to kind of bring him in, because I think obviously Goldson, if anyone did doubt the impact he had on his team, on this team, it's been really obvious that since he's been out, like how crucial a player he is. And I think Davies has been really impressive. I think if kind of balances the defence out, I think he complements Goldson really well. He's also capable of those kind of long switching passes that Goldson does. So I think, especially him being left-footed as well, that bit of experience that he has just looks comfortable. And I thought they looked like a really solid partnership before the injuries happened.
Yeah, so all 3 of us have picked Connor Goldson, but there's quite a few people in the comments saying, one person saying he's a time bomb, another person saying he's shocking, another person saying the only time I'd pick Goldson was to play dodgeball. So that kind of shows the disparity, I guess, in opinion and our support. Reiss, just on the Souttar or Davies thing, why did you prefer Souttar?
It just kind of came to mind that he's get more experience and perhaps more knowledge of playing in the SPL or SPFL rather. I think that he's just got more experience of low blocks, physical players, like that style of football, the turfs, everything that Davies maybe doesn't. I think Davies is probably the better footballer, in truth, but Goldson, Suter, seems more physical. I thought Davies was brilliant and very composed on the ball for the spells that he's been involved, but I just kind of had this hope that Suter would be a bit more rough and tumble than Goldson, but probably the same ability on the ball.
Yeah, I think Davies just edges it for me, but I can understand the sort of experience in the league, John Suter, but I think Davies' ability on the ball just edges it for me. Left back Kai, Ridvan Yilmaz or Barisic. I've obviously seen very little of Ridvan Yilmaz so far. I think from what I have seen, he looks really promising, and he offers us something that's a bit of a different dimension to Barisic in terms of going forward. I think Barisic was largely quite harshly treated by fans in the first half of the season, although he did have a few shockers in there. I think I would, just on pure promise alone and offering the pace down the line, I'd go for Yilmaz. What about yourself?
No, it's Yilmaz for me. Even see just in the kind of small snippets we've seen of him, his ability to kind of cut through the middle of the park, and it just gives Kent's obviously good when he's got the space, but I feel like sometimes Barisic is a bit too close to him and he kind of closes down the space that Kent's got to work in. So I feel like Yilmaz is smart enough and he's good enough on the ball to kind of cut inside to gives Kent the space out wide, but if he does need to overlap, then again Yilmaz is an intelligent enough player to kind of go beyond and make that run. I just feel like there's a lot more promise in an attacking sense, which we definitely need in the SPFL compared to playing Barisic. And not that it's his fault, but he does whip in must be about 20-30 crosses a game from deep positions that hasn't been effective so far. Whereas it felt like the crosses coming in from that side were a lot less when Yilmaz was playing there.
Yeah, Reiss, would you agree Yilmaz in there? And if so, why?
Yeah, I think Yilmaz just is what Kai's saying. I think his ability to go beyond Kent would help quite a lot. I think Kent gets doubled up on very often, and if we've got a player who can even go beyond them, I don't think I've seen Barisic do it once. I think Barisic is maybe the better defender, but I'd say because we'll have more of the ball going forward in domestic games, that we need that out ball down the left-hand side. You see Tav supporting wingers on the right-hand side who aren't as good as Ryan Kent, but they get more luck because he's making that space for them. Whereas Borna doesn't really give Kent that option. He just sits behind them and waits for him to knock it back so he can cross it for the 74th time. But just sorry to respond to one of the comments that I seen there. I would pick Suter over Davies because he's got more experience playing in our domestic league. Although Davies is perhaps a better footballer, we've seen good footballers come up here before and don't know how to handle it.
Yeah, I think on your point that Borna's a better defender than Yilmaz, that would concern me because Borna is not a good defender at all. He's always offered us something going forward, but defensively, especially stopping crosses, he is not a good defender on that front. I don't think either of our defenders are really particularly good on that front, if I'm honest. I'm going to skip by right back because I'm assuming James Tavernier is in there ahead of Adam Devine. Into midfield, we've got a whole host of midfielders here, the vast majority of whom seem to be injured. So if we stay consistent with three in the midfield, selection between Sands, McCann, Lundstrom, Jack, Davis, Kamara, Offabor. I don't even know if we should include Offabor in this list, but he's on the list. We'll go for him. Arfield, Hadji, Lowry, and Tillman. Reiss, you're three in midfield out of that list?
I'd be tempted to go Lundstrom, Kamara. No, sorry, Lundstrom, Lawrence, Hadji. I'd have Lundstrom playing as a 6, Lawrence rather gone more box to box as an 8, and Hadji probably more advanced as a 10 and a 4-2-3-1.
Right, okay. Kai, what about yourself?
I'd honestly absolutely love to see the three Reeses put together, just to kind of see something going forward and not having the two holding players. But I've actually, I don't know if this is a recency bias thing, but really liked seeing Lundstrom in the two with Sands. So I think Lundstrom's looked a lot better again since he was kind of given that freedom to go forward. So again, it's probably recency bias on this, but I'd probably go Sands next to Lundstrom. So Sands is the 6, Lundstrom is the 8, and then Lawrence ahead of them as a 10.
Yeah, I have to agree. To be honest, I really liked Sands and Lundstrom beside each other. It was the Aberdeen game, wasn't it? Before they became our central defensive partnership in Paisley, which blows the mind. But I thought they worked really well together, and Sands almost gave Lundstrom the license to push forward and to have that more forward-thinking role, which I think suited him better than sitting in that pivot. But I like you say, I like Reese's idea of a forward-thinking, attacking set. I think I would actually, who would I go for? Probably I'd go for Lundstrom, followed by. It's a tough one. I think I'd go ideally Lundstrom, Tillman, and Hadji in there. If I'm being honest, I'm throwing Tillman in there purely because I think he has a lot to offer us. His work rate is questioned quite a lot of time, and I do understand that and I do see it. But I think over the past few weeks, he's been one of the main creative aspects within our team, and I think he's an important part of that. Tom Lawrence still finds his way into the team, I think, but I think it's in one of the front three positions rather than in that sort of that midfield role that's more of the attacking side of things. Right, looking at the front three, Matondo, Wright, Lawrence, Kent, Cholak, Morelos, Roof, Sakala. Kai, I'll come to you first on that one.
I'm still going to stick with Kent on the left because I know obviously team selection has been criticised for this, but he is capable, and I think he looks more capable with Yilmaz here, kind of giving him that space. So for getting the team that I want, and I'm getting Yilmaz offering what he does, I'm going to keep Kent on the left. Like I said, Lawrence is a 10 to go. Being hopeful, I'm really hopeful Hadji's just going to come back and hit the ground running, and I think he's a player everybody kind of sees has got potential. Both fatigueness, kind of the creative aspect, it's just whether he kind of has, he's obviously not always had blistering pace anyway, but it just depends again how the injuries kind of affected his legs and his ability to move. And then up top, I'm going Cholak, the goal scoring record alone. And I think Morelos has massively failed to impress and feel like he should be out the door in the coming months.
Right, I've changed my mind. I'm shoving Lawrence back into the number 10 role, and I'm putting Hadji wide right, Cholak up top, and I think you have to go with Kent on the left-hand side at the moment. Reese, what about yourself?
See, I forgot Hadji plays off the right at times, but then you've not got that width. For me, I'm keeping on 10, and I would have Kent, Cholak, and Sakala. I think Sakala is so frustrating, right? Like, honestly, see, watching him, the amount of times you just want to put, like, Stephen Davis's brain in him or something, for me is frustrating, but his pace is frightening, and I think he creates opportunities for himself just with his pace. It's a lot harder to develop pace than what it is technique, so give him time and enough opportunity to practice on the park, and I reckon he would develop that, and good right well.
Yeah, so I think going by the 11 I picked, so we're looking at McGregor in goals, Tab at right back with central defensive partnership of Goldson and Davies, with Yilmaz at left back, followed by Lundstrom, Tillman and Lawrence in midfield with a front three of Hadji, Cholak and Kent. That, to me, is a pretty exciting team, and a team that's full of attacking creativity, attacking flair, and I think what it does do is it kind of it symbolises how much our team has been impacted by injuries. Does that, going through that exercise, thank you very much to Paul McGarrigle for asking that question, but Kai, does going through that exercise kind of reinforce how many injuries that we have actually had and how big or how much of an impact it's had on our squad?
I think it definitely puts it into perspective, especially when you were like rhyming the list of midfielders and went through about 10 names. And when it comes to match day now, you're struggling to get kind of 3 or 4, but it's a choice between 3 or 4 for kind of 3 positions. It obviously does put it into perspective, but I still, even if Gio puts out the attacking team that Reiss has got, if it's the same style of play, if he's still got no game plan, then honestly don't know if the team selection changes anything, which is genuinely my biggest worry after we come back from the break.
Yeah, Reiss, same question to you, just about, does it put it into a bit of perspective for you? Well, I'm not sure Reiss can actually hear us at the moment, so we'll fire on a wee bit. Kai, just talking about just looking at the games after the break. My fear about Giovanni van Bronckhorst still being in position is we've got 5 weeks now, and obviously, as we mentioned at the start, it's the perfect time to make that change, because it allows another philosophy or some changes in style to come into play at that point, ahead of the Hibs game, and then obviously we've got Aberdeen and a few other games in the lead up to the Celtic game. What happens if I'll just add Reiss back in here? What happens if we lose against Hibs or drop points against Hibs and Aberdeen? We're then in some additional nightmare scenario that we've not made any changes and the games are going to keep coming thick and fast. I mean, it's entirely possible that could happen, but what do we do as a club at that point?
I feel like at that point it's too late. So I feel like if that does happen, Van Bronckhorst isn't going anywhere. I think the earliest, if he doesn't go before the World Cup break, I don't even think they sack him in January. I genuinely feel like, I know a couple of guys have said this in the chat, that they think they'll see out end of the season, but I feel like this could drag on to maybe around March. I don't see, even if he loses, even if we don't win a game until the next Old Firm game, I genuinely don't see him going. It come down to a pride thing by the board at that point. They've made the decision now. When it is, like we've all spoke about it, it is the best time to bring in a new manager. The manager has a mini pre-season to get the players into their way of thinking, and then the manager can see if he doesn't fancy any of the players, with obviously a view to kind of moving them on, and then he has the whole January transfer window to potentially try and bring a player or two in that kind of suits their style more. But if you don't make that decision now, I feel like it will be an end of the season decision, just purely on a pride thing for the board, that they've made that mistake and they're just going to stick by it. I can't see them folding if they don't kind of make the call now, which is really frightening.
Yeah, I think it's really concerning to me, and we know how much we've struggled coming back from the winter break in recent years. I think apart from the 55 season, we've struggled every single time. I don't really know what the reason behind that struggle is, but it's really concerning, the fact that we went into the break really low on confidence and dropping points, and the potential to come out of the break still low on confidence and dropping more points is really concerning, and the size of the gap that there could be to Celtic very quickly is of great concern as well. In terms of as we go into the transfer window, if Giovanni van Bronckhorst is still the manager, you'd expect the board to back him. I think there's questions as to whether the board have backed him properly until now, but you would expect the board to back him with money and finances, knowing the position we're in. Is that the right thing to do with a manager who's potentially on his way out the door in the summer?
I think the whole thing boils down to, I think it's genuinely just a matter of time. Whether it's stubbornness from the board, whether it's a financial thing, I think he's going to be out the door. But if you keep him, like you said, the smart thing to do would be to invest in him. But you don't know if the board have the view of, like, if they keep him until January and going into the window, if they're still thinking about getting rid or cutting ties in March or the end of the season. So I think that's not going to be, if he is here until January, like, that's not going to be obvious until they don't back him then. And then I feel if they don't back him in January, that's just a sign that they're going to get rid of him. So, like, why not do it now? Why risk? Like, what's really going to change? Like, his style of play is his style of play. We heard it from Feyenoord fans. I don't think they had the kind of mass injury list that we have right now. Like, do the players change anything? They'll maybe get you a couple extra points here and there with a bit of magic, but can we still rely on that, like, week on week? As a club of our stature in the league that we're playing, with the players we have at our disposal, should not be relying on the ball breaking in the box or someone to pull out a wonder strike. It's just, I just don't get it. I don't get the reason behind keeping him just now. And if things do get worse before the Old Firm game, I think we'll see. I don't think they'll get rid of him in January. I think we'll see a lack of backing, which is just a sign that they're kind of dragging out his contract as much as they can. So it's, I mean, I'm assuming it obviously wouldn't cost as much to kind of terminate it when there's 6 months left on the deal. And that's the only way I can kind of see it going.
Yeah, it's the more you think about it, and the potential for it to get worse is it's almost not worse, not worth bearing thinking about. I think it's interesting the number of comments saying that about Ross Wilson, and I suppose when you think about the approach that has been taken in the kind of, I guess, football department structure that we have at Rangers, in terms of Ross Wilson, I guess, is there to provide the continuity, even if the manager were to leave, in terms of strategy and style and approach. So in theory, we should continue to spend money improving the team, improving the squad, based upon Ross Wilson's vision for the club, I guess, which at the same time, I know recently comments have said that it's a combined or joint decision between the manager and Ross Wilson as to who comes in. Does the idea of that approach in the transfer window make you nervous, or even what's your thoughts on Ross Wilson's position at this stage, Kai?
Well, I think that's where it'd be really interesting to know the proper dynamics of it. It's something that we're genuinely never going to know. Like, if Van Bronckhorst gets sacked, he's not going to come out and say kind of what the real relationship is with Ross Wilson, I feel, unless it's a really, really bitter kind of breakup in that way. I don't think he's going to do like a tell-all and reveal like kind of how the board chats have went and stuff. I don't see that happening. So without knowing the proper relationship, and to know if it is, like, if Ross Wilson does go to a list with Gio and he's like, oh, these are the players that I want, do any of these interest you? Or if it's just he gives them one name and it's a yes or no. Like, if that is the relationship, like, we're kind of led to believe, if the true relationship is that it's a collaboration between Ross Wilson and the manager, and then doing that while, well, obviously I don't know what the board are thinking, but I feel like most Rangers fans don't think Van Bronckhorst will be here to the end of the season. If he does make it, won't be here next season. So I think it's a kind of scary prospect to go to a manager that doesn't look like he has a long-term future here and kind of discuss players you're going to bring in to take us forward. Because obviously you look at the kind of the Patterson, Bassey and Aribo sales were kind of the start of Rangers going with the player trading model and trying to do that going forward. And obviously Yilmaz kind of looks like he's a player that's been running with the potential of that. So going and looking at that with a manager who might come in and not fancy any of the players that have been bought, it's quite a scary prospect without knowing the full kind of relationship between Ross Wilson and the manager.
Yeah, we've spoken a lot tonight about Giovanni van Bronckhorst. We've spoken a bit about Ross Wilson as well. We've spoken about the board's inaction. Kai, the AGM is coming up, I believe, on the 6th of December. I dread to think what the atmosphere is going to be like at that board meeting. You get the feeling that the board are making it worse for themselves with their inaction, don't you?
I feel like it's just going to be like comparative to kind of other AGMs of past years. There's going to be a lot more questions about what's going on the pitch and what kind of conversations have been had in the boardroom kind of regarding the management and playing staff. I feel like it's a massive mistake if anyone attending and with the ability to kind of ask a question isn't questioning what's going on the park and what's going on in the boardroom. I feel like it's a massive mistake to kind of try and focus on anything financial related this time round. Like we turned over the profit that obviously wasn't including the Champions League money and the sales of Owen Bassey. I feel like the questions need to be like, why have you decided to persist with this? Like, what is the long term plan? And it is going to be hostile. Like, it is. And I feel like at this point they've brought it on themselves. You can't really feel any sympathy for any anyone attending the AGM that's going to have to sit and be berated by these questions because as fans, I feel like we deserve the answers.
Yeah, we absolutely deserve the answers as fans. There's plenty of comments talking about the board's apparent apparent disinterest in the football side of things. They're only interested in the financial side of things. We saw in the accounts that a decent chunk of money was paid back to them for their investment that they made. There's two schools of thought, I guess, on whether that's the right thing to do or this is the right time for that to happen. We're also appreciative of the money that they put in at the time to get us towards 55, but there's further discussions to be had around that. There's I think it was Kyle Fox, the American businesswoman, that was interested in investing. I think there's much more legs in that going forward and we'll be hearing much more about that as we enter the new year. But I think the AGM itself is going, as Paul McGarrigle says here, is going to be absolutely carnage. And I think there'll be a massive backlog of questions as well at the board. And I'm not convinced we'll get the answers there either, to be honest. It's easy enough for a board member to palm off a question at an AGM because the person asking the question isn't allowed to ask a follow-up. So they can just say whatever they want in response and take that on. The board are pretty silent anyway. As it stands, they're not forthcoming with reasoning, or they're not. They spoke a lot about transparency, both in the summer and in seasons before. I've not seen any transparency from the board whatsoever. It all seems to be backroom dealings, and I think as a support, we're absolutely understandably suspicious now when it comes to a lack of transparency, or when some strange decisions seem to be made, even on the back of, and I know it was when Dave King was in charge and not the current board, but even the price fixing side of things and the lack of an apology for it. And there's a whole host of things that have happened over the last 6 months that are really, really strange from a board that had effectively Rangers fans praising them at their feet when they got us to 55, and for the effort they put in and the amount of commitment they showed and the amount of investment they put forward personally. But it seems to have been that was the one goal and the only goal, and they've completely backtracked from anything more. I think as Rangers fans we were expecting that to continue, but it just hasn't. Kai, has it? And we're really seeing the detrimental effects of it now.
No, it feels like the rug can be completely swept from under your feet. Like you're on that massive high and then you just get brought back down. You see, obviously, fair enough. We obviously appreciate the money that was put in by the board and the investors, but the fact that at the very first chance to take it back, they've taken the money all at once. When obviously, like the money coming in that's going to go towards the next financial year will probably mean we make even more profit. Like, did they all have to be paid back at the same time? It just feels a bit kind of suspicious to me that the money's kind of all been taken back at the one time. And as much as we do appreciate it, and we did help us towards the 55, it's like, is that really the best time? Like, it's kind of taints the investment a bit. Like, obviously, they're going to get paid back eventually, and you do want people to get paid back the money that they've invested, but it just seemed kind of strange to me that it was all taken out at the one time. I don't know how you feel about that, if I'm just being a bit overly critical.
No, I'd completely agree with that, and I think the fact it was just over £14 million was taken out in one season, which is an astronomical amount, especially in a season when actually a lot of us thought that we were in for a full squad rebuild last summer. Now, for that not to take place, to see £14 million taken out of the club's finances, and then to experience the season that we are experiencing to date, is immediately concerning, and it immediately raises questions about the what the board are doing, what their strategy is, what they're seeing this look like over the next 3 seasons, 4 seasons, 5 seasons. How do they see this project continuing? They spoke a lot about Rangers being self-sufficient, and we're all on board with that. But I think there's a process you go through to get to that stage, and it, like you say, it does feel like the rug's been swept from under all the Rangers fans' feet on that front, as if we won the 55th title for in our history, and then it's effectively they've shut up. I don't want to say they've shut up shop, because they have invested, but they've not kept the levels of investment in the playing squad as to what they were beforehand, especially when we've seen the massive sales with the likes of Nathan Patterson, Calvin Bassey, Joe Aribo. There's significant chunks of money are coming into the club, and like you say, they'll fall into this financial year, but you add on the Champions League money as well, and it's a hefty chunk of money is in there, and to see the lack of investment is confusing as a fan, and I think the board definitely have questions to answer on that one. Kai, we've just hit the 50-minute mark, so I won't keep you too much longer. Thank you very much for joining us tonight, Kai.
No problem, mate. Pleasure as always.
And thank you very much to Reiss, who disappeared about 10 minutes ago with suffering from some technical problems, but he made a few controversial opinions, as he always likes to do. Anyway, thank you very much, everyone else, for listening. As we're in the World Cup break, we're in a bit of a lighter schedule than normal with our bulletins, so we'll be live every Wednesday evening and every Sunday evening, so make sure you continue to tune in. Please remember to subscribe to the TII YouTube channel, toggle on those notifications, and you'll get a little email every single time we go live. Thank you very much for listening, and until next time, hopefully, if this works, until next time, goodbye.